2010 Toyota RAV4, and we will replace the axle seal. On the passenger side, the driver side is the same. So first you need to lift the vehicle, put it on a jack stands, then take the tire off, and next need to remove the axle nut. It's 30 millimeter 12 point socket. And there is a band on the skirt to hold it in place, so we'll use the punch to straighten it out a bit as much as we can, and then we'll get this nut off. So now when the nut is off, we will use the punch and hammer the axle out. It should go at least an inch or so to get loose. So now when the axle is loose, next what we will do, we will remove the ABS sensor over here. It's 10mm bolt. So the tricky part is that usually they are quite seized in there. So we'll remove the bolt, spray it with WD, then use a small screwdriver to pry it out a bit, spray it with WD inside, and then we will be kind of spinning it and twisting it out. So I have installed the screwdriver in between just to give it a little bit of room. Then we will spray a little bit more, let it soak a bit, and next what we will do, we will try gently, this is plastic piece, so we don't want to break it. And the reason why we need to remove the sensor, because it's quite close to the axle, so when you try to remove the axle, there's a big chance that you will damage it. So now we'll basically use the punch and gently hammer it up and down, up and down, up and down, get it loose, and then try to twist it out. Alright, so here's the ABS sensor, and as I said, it sits like this. So you just push it, just hammering at this end, twist it up, down, and try to pry it out at the same time and get it out. So now we can disconnect this from this clamp, since we will be disconnecting the upper arm, so we don't want this to get pinched or scratched too much. So we can put it aside, just take it away. The further the better. Alright, so next we, sorry for that. So next we will remove that light doesn't want to stay up. We'll remove this. Okay, so next we'll remove this bolt and nut from this stretch arm. Then we will take the bolt and nut of the upper arm and bolt and nut of the lower arm. So the top arm bolt is removed. So to get to that bar, so I'm not sure how to show you. So I'm using the two extensions and 17mm socket. So I'll have impact just over there. Those bolts there are tight. Usually they're quite rusted. So it's nice to have access with the impact, and you can hold the nut on the other side. Okay, so bottom, top, that arm are all loose. I don't believe we need to disconnect the shock, although I did it on the other side, but this time we'll try to do it without shock removal. So now we'll just take a pry bar and try to free up the hub from all the arms. Okay, so now when all this is loose, we will just push the axle out and pull this towards yourself and get the axle free. Alright, so I think we still need to remove the shock. So that's another 17mm bolt and nut on the bottom, because it's quite hard to get the axle out. It's swiveling on a shock. So the axle is out. Another thing that you should pay attention to is this brake line, brake hose, because if this everything is disassembled, it might get stretched too much. So grab yourself a jack stand so your hub resting on the jack stand instead of the hose. So now at this point we can go underneath, take a pry bar, take a hammer and get that axle out. Alright, so here's our axle. To get the axle out, the easiest way is to use the pry bar, put it in here and then hammer it really hard a few times and it's out. You can do the prying, but the prying usually does not work. So we'll get the axle cleaned, we will get the diff cleaned around the seal. Okay, so now when the axle is clean and the seal is removed, the old seal, so here's the new one, the part number 14632, and that's SKF aftermarket seal. So to get the seal in, we'll use a deep socket. So this is engine 5/8 and seal sits just perfectly inside. Also it's slightly bigger than the seal, so we will be able to get the seal exactly flush with the surface of the diff, and that's how it was installed, the original one, so that works perfectly for us. So on the other side, I didn't have to remove anything else to get the seal in, but because of the exhaust here, we'll need to remove this cross member, so we have some room to hammer in that seal. So the new seal is in place, all flush with the case, so now we will get the axle in. So before we put the axle in, we will put some diff fluid, synthetic 75W90. So when the steel touches the seal first time, it's not dry and also goes in way smoother. Okay, so you get the axle started, so you put it in, make sure that the spines are aligned so it's engaged, try to spin it and see if the drive shaft is spinning, and then you just use this type of motion, push it all the way in. So now we check, axle sits all the way in. Now we can reassemble everything. So first we do that bottom cross member that we took off to get the seal in. Now we will get the axle put in, though before we do that we'll apply some anti-seize just to make sure that next time when it comes out it's easy to get it out. Okay, so axle is in and we will just use the axle nut to get it started. Next, what we will do, we will attach the shock, since the lower control arm has to be off to get the shock bolt out. So now when the shock is attached, you can remove the support. So now the hose is free. Next, what we will do, we'll use the bottle jack and we'll be lifting the lower control arm. That will help us to get the bottom bolt in place, the top bolt in place, and in the end this tension arm. So for all the bolts we will apply some Loctite on the thread and some anti-seize on the body. Okay, so now when upper arm, lower bolt for the shock and the tension arm are all tight, the last thing we need to do is to get our ABS sensor back. We'll put some anti-seize on it, and we will clean that hole with the wire brush to get any excessive rust out of there. So now we will torque this. So the torque is 159 foot-pounds. You can use any sort of bar to hold this in place, or even engage the brakes. So 159, it's quite a bit of torque. So when this is done, we will use the punch and push this back in, and you can see that it aligns with the spot where it was before. Okay, so the last step is to fill the diff with fluid. So this is the driver's side, passenger side, and you can see where my ratchet goes in. So there is a 10mm Allen plug. On the other side there is the drain plug. Since I was doing the pinion seal, I drained the fluid at that point, but you obviously will need to drain it. So get that nut out and we will fill the diff up. So to get the fluid in, I'm using this little transfer pump. It's battery powered, and we are pumping fluid out of the jar into the diff just over there. So we'll basically be pumping until we see the fluid dripping off the diff, then we'll stop and install the fill plug back. Okay, so as you can see, the fluid started to come out of the diff. So we'll remove the hose, install the plug back, and that will be the end of the axle seal replacement procedure. Thanks for watching, and do it yourself.